Hi, I'm Matthew Herzberg, and this is the Myopia Mindset. You know, it's Myopia Awareness Week, and what I have for you is part two of my discussion with Doctors Jennifer Lyerly, David Ng, and Cary Herzberg. Part one was all about the myopia management toolbox. Part two is where it gets really heated. Cary Herzberg throws down the gauntlet and says, I feel like we've lost 40 years. So let's get to it.
I mean, it's like we've lost four decades, guys.
What do you mean?
I mean, we've lost here we are, you know. Well, back in the 80s, it was it was diabetes, obesity, and myopia. For all of you that may not be familiar with the fact is that myopia, I graduated in 71, so I was at that point, if a patient was past college, right, you didn't see them again until they were like 40 when they needed near point help, right? Because their eyes didn't change very much. But back in the early 80s, all of a sudden we started seeing patients every 6 months again. And the secret was that they had IBM desktops and other things that they were doing, which were, unusual for the day. That was a new thing. And their eyes were changing compared to previous generations. And so you had that happening at that time. And incidentally, attach couch potato to this whole thing because it's very much related. You had obesity, the obesity epidemic was beginning, and so was diabetes. And they were afraid to blow the whistle on this thing till the 90s because no one wanted to look like a fool if it wasn't. So we had all this going on now, right? And we could see even then. I mean, I remember back in the 80s when we talked about myopias, the schools talked about myopias being all genetics. Okay. I mean, seriously, that's what they were saying. It's all genetics. And we as clinicians were sitting there looking at it, and we were having patients that were higher myopes than their parents who didn't get myopia until they were in grad school. And their parents were farmers in China. So, I mean, sir, we were seeing the exact opposite of what they were seeing. I said, well, how is this genetics? Where is this coming from? Right? This can't all be genetics. So we knew it was environmental, but the schools were promoting our education bastions of education were promoting the genetics. Well, finally, the clinicians finally convinced everybody to start doing studies and look into this thing. But this thing is, I mean, I felt like this was like Captain Obvious from the beginning, of the early 80s. And I know I was rare at that point. There weren't many people like me, but this did grow to a point. And it just seems to me like we've lost, here we are, it's 2026. Okay, 2026, and we're still talking about getting doctors to do myopia prevention and control, right? That to me is absurd. We've missed generations, and now we're paying for it right now. We're trying to play catch up. Let's start. I think there should be like a call for all optometrists to get together and to figure this out so we don't lose another generation. Okay, let's stop this thing right now because either it is or it isn't. This is a problem or it isn't a problem. Let's decide as a profession. I think that has to come to the fore. I think we need to make a professional decision on this. Is this something we need to deal with or not? And then let's act on it. Because I'm sick and tired of losing generations to myopia, the proper education, and having my patients come in and say, why didn't anybody say, I haven't heard this before, kind of thing. I thought that dialogue would end, decades ago. And here we are. So to me, that's frustrating. Okay, I don't know if you can feel that, but it's real stuff, guys. It's real passion because I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of listening to it. I think we need to change the discourse. We need to get this dialogue going. So are we committed or not to get this done? I mean, come on, this is important.
Cary, I'm going to unfrustrate you a little bit because you sound more than just a little frustrated. So parents are super educated now. Like, it blows me away. And if my colleagues aren't on top of their game, that parent is not coming back, right? There isn't a week that doesn't go by in my practice where a parent, at the end of the exam, I go, do you have any questions? And a parent goes, what's my child's hyperopic reserve? That's from a parent, right? Like, imagine that, right? If you're not well versed in myopia management, you don't even know what that parent's asking you, right? Yep. They are asking amazing questions. They might not know why they're asking because they all have these parent forums now. And they're saying, oh, you got to ask these questions or you got to find these numbers, right? Like, I mean, it's coming to a point where, and this is more recent than before, where a parent would say to me, you do custom ortho K, right? I go, yeah. He goes, like, everyone says custom, but they're not custom. You do custom, right? I go, yeah, I do custom because that's why I'm
Yeah.
here, because you do custom. Like I never got these comments before. So the parents are becoming much more educated. And that should be a wake-up call to our colleagues, right? Like, I mean, you got to know the answer when mom and dad is asking you, right? You can't just say, well, I'm not sure. I'll get back to you. You've lost them already. Mom and dad are not coming back next year.
Yeah, Jennifer, in your practice, are you recognizing more educated parents who are coming in asking you questions, or they have more knowledge?
Absolutely. I mean, used to be obviously I had to present this like a novel idea. Many times parents are coming in, they already said we want ortho K, or my kid plays soccer and they said that you fit them in these MiSight lenses and we want that too. I get a lot of those conversations now where they come in knowing with a purpose that they want to pursue one of these options. It used to be we actually did have quite a few referrals from our local optometrists that had myopia patients that they didn't want to do contact lenses or atropine with. And I'm thrilled to say that over the last 6 years, many of my colleagues have stopped referring to me and are doing it themselves, which I'm so happy. Like that's great if the patient can be taken care of with you without them having to come to me too. And so I've seen it get adopted more and more in our local area. I'm going to give an example of Daryl, who I do the podcast with. For years, he referred every myopia management patient to me. And I was like, Daryl, there is no excuse. Like, I know you're not going to do ortho K, but you can fit these kids in MiSight. He is. Okay. So these doctors can learn something new. And I do think it kind of starts in the community and snowballs. So if you're the provider in your community, a lot of times other people say, you know what, I probably can do that too. And they start getting more comfortable with it as you refer, patients amongst yourselves. I was looking up here earlier as we were talking, Vision Monday back in 2022 did a survey, and 70% of doctors said that they practice myopia management in this survey of US optometrists. Now, I know with these surveys, sometimes they're a little self-selecting on who's actually responding to the surveys. But I thought what was really interesting in this survey was most of those people said that they were practicing myopia management with spectacles, which we did not have spectacles in the United States at that time. Uh-huh. So most of them were fitting kids in progressives and saying they were doing myopia management. So we have some confusion about what works and what doesn't work. But again, I think there's knowledge amongst our community. I think there's a little bit of a failure to start because of the contact lens aspect or the atropine aspect of it. But with glasses, apparently, U.S. optometrists have been fitting myopia management glasses for a very long time. So there's really no excuse. And I just expect a lot of these numbers to change. And I've seen it in my community where it is kind of like everybody in Raleigh is doing myopia management. You're not going to go to optometrists and not have that discussion at this point in my community.
Mm-hmm. And I've been in practices specifically who said on their website they do myopia management, and I've cold called them and gone in and been like, I hear you do myopia management. And then through conversation, 5 minutes, you discover that they really don't know what they're talking about, right? Maybe they tried to fit MiSight. Maybe they tried their hand at ortho K. I don't know exactly, but it usually comes down to MiSight. I haven't heard the glasses thing yet, but that raises a bigger issue for me, which is kind of attached to compliance, which is if there's a lot more claiming to do myopia management, to your point with spectacles, which aren't actually the real deal, then we have this like glut of misinformation, and then we start to create new problems. Is that it because we're opening up the category, because we're bringing in more ECPs, because it's easier, because we're encouraging more docs to do it, are we then also facing a crisis of doctors claiming that they're doing it and they're not doing it, and then that affects their patients? And then David, I think you brought this up before, where it's like you would have in Canada parents that would come in and say, my kid was prescribed these lenses, nobody showed us how to wear them, they're not working, and anybody jump in this. Are we facing that as a bigger problem along with this increased amount of knowledge and accessibility?
Well, it's attention with Stellus, it'd be attention to detail. It's always attention to detail, though, I think, with everything we're talking about here, because it's follow-up. Doctors have to do follow-up on these patients. They should be doing follow-up on these. I think that's right. I think we all agreed on that. They should all have to do follow-up. And then, obviously there's going to be doctors that don't want to do follow-up because they're not structured financially for that setup, and they're not getting paid for it properly, so they're not going to do it. And that neglect is, will cause that to be, ineffective or lack of total as effective as it should be. So it's a fault through the entire system. I often think about the fact that, we're talking about a specialty here, like any other medical specialty, and yet our doctors, aren't looking at it that way, and they're trying to fit it into a VCP model, which definitely doesn't work, does it? So, there's a lot of challenges afoot here. So, yeah, you've got to pay attention to your patients. If you don't, you're going to have a less than optimum result.
Yeah, David.
Follow-up is definitely you need it. What we're seeing in Canada, which I hope doesn't happen to US, but it's bound to happen, is I'm seeing patients come in with their special myopia spectacles that they purchased last year. Prescriptions getting worse, and I can't even identify the lens. Okay, like I'm looking at the lens, my optician can't identify it. And I said, where did you get these? And they got them at optical chain ABC, and they were $100, and that was their myopia lens. Unfortunately, there's so much, and Cary, you could probably talk a little bit about this because you see what's going on in China. There's so many lenses available and undergoing research, and a good number of them, the data is really weak, like it doesn't work. Yet these products get sold, and there's a lab or there's a distributor that picks it up, relabels it, and then sells it and says, oh, this was developed alongside of whatever product that actually does work. We're seeing that here in Canada, which is, again, the reason why that upsets me. And I had a conversation like this today with a company is we cannot turn back the clock. You put a child in a myopia lens that has no data, and you wait a year, 2 years to go by and see that prescription get worse. That's worse than even fitting that child with single vision glasses because you're giving the parents a false hope, right? So that is a big challenge we're seeing here in Canada. And, I hope you guys don't get that in the US, but I have a feeling it's just going to trickle down effect. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, how do we avoid that crisis? Or am I being apocalyptic or am I being more doomsday oriented here? Because it's like, I really see this as a huge problem of because like I said, I've been in these practices where they're like, I do myopia management, and they don't. It's essentially false advertising as far as I'm concerned. That's my personal opinion.
I mean, this is right. Here's our conundrum, right? We're talking about we want everyone to do it, and we don't want them not having the training to be an expert to hold them back. And at the same time, when they're not an expert and they're dabbling and they're not getting great results, it's kind of like, oh, why are you doing it? You're messing it up. So I don't want to discourage people from getting started, and I know not everyone is going to nerd out about this and really get into the research and read all the studies and do it like how I've done it. But I think you have to trust the products that are FDA approved in this scenario then, and not be kind of going off label and doing your own thing. And so if you are fitting SOSLS with centered on the kid's eyes so they can see through it and not looking through the peripheral distorted areas, that should be effective. And so there's not a whole lot you as the doctor are going to be messing up at that point. Same thing with my site. If you're fitting it, it's going to work. You can't really mess that juice up. So I want to encourage people to do it and not discourage them from trying because they haven't gone to Vision by Design for 5 years in a row and know everything about myopia.
On that point too, Jennifer, we know that those studies that promote the lenses are largely effective, but there's parts of the subjects in the study that didn't do well. In other words, with the glasses in the MySight, 3 or 4 patients didn't change at all, but what happened to the other 6? Mm-hmm. So that's where, I think we come back to the same point again. It's like, we can't substitute experience, right? That's a fundamental, but also education. And our schools have failed us. The optometric education has failed us. Why isn't this the most important thing they're talking about in school right now? I know I applaud us for the period of time when we pushed medical. and we got to be a medical profession. I think that was a great thing. But now it's time, this gauntlet has to be passed on to myopia. Now it's time to train doctors properly, so we're not making excuses for them when they're out of school. They got a degree. They're supposed to be able to do this. And so it's frustrating for me to see that, like you guys are still the pioneer generation of this thing. We were the pioneer generation back in the 80s. What happened here? What happened to those missing 40 plus years? So,
I mean, to your point though, so when I was with J&J selling the Ability lens, more often than not, I would have practices that I would go into that would call it Ability CRT. And the reason why they would do that is because they were used to the phrase of CRT coming from Paragon, because Paragon had become this very recognizable name. And when I asked them why they were calling it that, those who picked up education in schools was through Paragon. Like Paragon did a great job of getting into the schools. So shouldn't we have seen the benefit of that? I think it's great that the AAOMC is investing more in getting into the schools. But we've already had, Paragon and Cooper Vision's investment in the school system. I mean, I see Justin Kwan posting all the time about how they're talking to students. But really, like, what are students prepared to do? I mean, they come out of school saddled with debt. The idea of private practice is not even really a possibility. They have to join a practice either as an associate or big box or corporate or whatever the case may be. And then they have to try to prove to that practice owner or that practice network that they should invest in them doing myopia management, which is something they don't really know much about. And the education to it has a lot of barriers to it. So it's I think it's more complicated than just optometry schools. I think we have we have something in the way that's preventing us from getting ultimately through that. Am I crazy here? Like, what do you all think?
Well, I agree with that. I mean, many of my colleagues that are at large group practices or PA-owned practices, they're expected to see a 15-minute eye exam. And at the end of the day, you can want to go into and start the day with the best ideas and plans ever that you're going to do this specialty, you're going to do that specialty, but you're not given time to carve out for follow-up visits. You don't have a robust system in place for how you're going to do follow-ups and charge for fee schedules. And you just have another patient waiting on you 7 minutes later, so it can be a grinded out situation. And that's why I think you do see private practices kind of leading these specialties, because it is so difficult to make this happen in a PA-backed practice. But I mean, at the same time, I think the schools, this is part of their education. I feel very confident in saying that it's not a big part of national boards. And the schools, you see the board passage rates, y'all don't need me to tell you, trying to get the students to pass national boards and hit the topics real hard though on that board exam is priority number one. And so this might be a small part of their contact lens course, but they got to hit those board questions. And even as hard as they're hitting them and with as frequently as hitting them, it's not like it's going all that well for many of our schools.
Mm-hmm.
Well said. Yeah, well said.
And I think it also has to do with this idea of the optometrist is not a salesperson. This has come up so many times on this podcast that optometrists are taught to do no harm. They're not taught to sell themselves or what they're doing at their practice. That's often viewed as being very disgusting in a lot of cases by optometrists. And I totally understand why. And they don't have that appropriate myopia management coordinator or staff member to then take over the selling part of it. David, what do you think that's a huge part of it? Is it is the overall problem just optometry in general? Are we expecting too much out of optometrists? Are we not everyone has to be a salesperson. You can find your own way doing it, but that isn't being taught to them. So how are they supposed to be able to do that?
I think, it comes down to the individual doc. They all have their own style. I mean, if they're all sort of stuck on, I don't sell anything, you sell healthy eyes, you that's what you do. This is just an extension of that. one of the challenges, if you went back, you were talking about the docs that work in commercial settings where, it's all about numbers and you have to get the patient in and out and you have to produce. Um, we see this as a challenge. We don't have the solution for it, but as of yesterday, we launched the P2P program in the AOMC. That's where doctors can sign up, and we're putting all the doctors together into small groups, and they're going to work out a solution themselves. So a commercial doc, if we can get them together, they know the pressures and they know the targets they have to hit. They know how much time they have and what they can do, what they can't do. And we're hoping them coming together, they're going to find a solution within their environments. It's an exciting program that we just launched literally last night. I think I put out the announcement last night. I don't know if you saw it.
I did.
Saw it.
And, we thought that we would only get like maybe 50 docs. So that's all our sign up online service is allowed. And we already hit it. So
congratulations.
now we got to extend the service. So that tells me there's a huge need. Docs want to do it. They just need help, and they need help from their colleagues. They need a little coaching. They just, need that little cheerleading. And I think that's going to help the profession as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, do we have an idea of are there buckets that we can put the myopia management ECP into? What's the minimum viability for a myopia management practice, right? If we have a doc at a certain stage where it's look, just focus on having the visual hygiene conversations, use Stellus, do atropine once we're able to get an FDA-approved atropine, and just stay in that zone or that bucket. And then if you docs who want to do more, we have MySight and we have other options. We have Ortho-K. And then for the doctors who are going to be that's much smaller group, customized or advanced Ortho-K or whatever we want to call it. Would that be a more appropriate way to go about it? Just to be we need to identify who these docs are and then set an option in front of them.
I mean, if I was running a PA back business, I would streamline that right now. And in my mind, most optometrists are fitting glasses and soft contact lenses. That's in the wheelhouse of, I would imagine, 99% of our colleagues. So ground one would be talking about your kidneys spend time outdoors and good near hygiene, and then Stellus and MySight, because you fit those just like regular glasses and regular soft contact lenses. And then for that next tier of people, that's when you're talking about, oh, I'm going to get topography. I'm going to consider adding axial length. I'm going to do orthokeratology. I'm going to add atropine in, because I do think atropine, even when it's FDA approved, it has some nuance, and you've got to kind of considerations with prescribing a medication with side effects to a child and the concentration and the strength and stuff like that. So that's going to be your tier two. But really, everybody can get going with what they're already comfortable doing, which is prescribing soft contact lenses and prescribing glasses.
Mm-hmm. And how do we address the referral issue? David, in Canada, do you all have the same problem we do in the United States?
Same problem. I've been preaching myopia for I don't know how many years, and I would say it's only in the recent years that I'm actually getting referrals from colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I got my first referral from ChatGPT today.
Oh, really?
That's cool.
So, okay, so what is it going to take then? Maybe we should close on this. What will it take then to get that referral system? Because I think that's really the missing part of this whole equation, right? I think that's the issue. I mean, what is it going to take to solve that problem?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
It's going to be a recognition of specialty care in these kinds of things like vision training and myopia management are going to be recognized by our profession as a specialty, and our colleagues are going to have to put up with it. They got to say, okay, you can call yourself a specialist, a myopia management specialist, and you can advertise and do other things. So, we had board certification before, but it was kind of like a joke when they came down. But I think this is real board certification, actually training doctors to go to our colleagues here to train in their offices for 3 to 6 months or whatever it takes for them to get this, and then board certify them in these specialties. And you'll have that group as the group that we aim for, the big this, it'll be smaller, but it'll be the picture of, well, who you would refer to if you have these cases that don't fit, which you don't cover in your own. And then you'll have smaller little things that come down to that point, like Jennifer was talking about, the being able to do spectacles in my sight and that kind of thing. So kind of like you're looking at orthodontia in dentistry, right? Where that's the recognized specialty. A dentist could do it, but chooses not to send to an orthodontist who's trained in that specialty. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about for optometry in the future here. I think that'd be a big growth spurt for us, and to refer then to those doctors that are doing everything, basically taking care of the myopia on a big scale. And they're going to be the ones who are going to do preventive care also, taking the youngsters many doctors can't handle peds. So you want to do peds, well, then refer it out, because you got to do peds. You got to do peds early. It's going to get messy in your office when the kids don't actually do what you think they're going to do. They do something entirely different. Mm-hmm. But, it's a complex thing, but I think, we start with this. And the other thing I was going to say, and I was just listening to everybody else, is we got to start getting paid for preventive care. Stop paying the surgeons for trying to help sick people, and start paying the basically the primary care specialists, the primary care doctors, for keeping people healthy. Okay, pay them if you want to, pay them the same amount of money, but I think it's not less. They shouldn't be paid less, because they're doing a more important job actually in the long run, keeping people out of hospitals. So I think we need to change that whole how we reimburse and how we how these things are looked at. And primary care doctors need to be at the top of the rung, because they're doing the max job to keep people healthy. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. Those are my suggestions.
I think it circles back, we're talking about driving referrals, and it all goes back to like getting the doctor to care, right? Like, I think we all, when we see a 6-year-old who's a -8, we all care. And we immediately think, oh, that's a problem. Well, if you see a 6-year-old that's a -1, how many of us now are thinking that's a problem? And this is a mindset change where, again, it took my colleagues saying, well, did you talk to them about how we can slow this down? Like, they're going to get worse. So and I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I do know they're going to get worse, but I didn't know I should care about that. Of course you should care. Like, that's a child. Why would you let anything get worse? Like, I don't want anything to get worse for that child. So just having that philosophy change and not waiting until, it's a complete disaster. Like, you have to start early for myopia management to be effective. And I do think that's where, just talking to our colleagues about any myope, that's the time to start, right? Like, maybe even pre-myopia, it's the time to start with some low dose atropine. Right. We have to get people to start caring the second they see myopia beginning to develop, and not just only caring when it's a -10. And now there's very limited to no options for us already left.
And the case histories have shown their parents are myopes and the grandparents, you know what I mean? They're, the warning signs are all up there, and they're low hyperopes or whatever it is. Treat the patient, and then try to get in to see those youngsters of those other families earlier and earlier that you can, so you can deal with this, and you may be able to prevent most of it.
Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder what it is that is going to get more ECPs to care, like you're describing, Jennifer, because, obviously you make a great point, right? But then why isn't every optometrist in that mindset just by default, right? You would think that should be the default setting in that case. So it makes me wonder how this is going to have to be, reframed. Like, the messaging for as long as I've been in this industry has been around, by the year 2050, half of the world's population. But that hasn't changed. That hasn't moved the needle enough. The same talking points, I saw a YouTube short the other day with docs saying, like, we need to do something about this. Like, there's a myopia epidemic. And I'm like, that's awesome that you're saying that. But I've seen this and heard this being said for 20 years now. And it's like, it's the same talking point, and it just isn't working. It reminds me of something that Dr. Nick Despedita said, where, before there was a myopia epidemic, there was an obesity epidemic, and obesity is still an issue. It's still a problem. It's still something that we're trying to solve. So it makes me wonder, like, what it's going to take. We have a lot of doctors who are super passionate about ortho-K and myopia management. They do like training or a dinner or whatever. They invite other doctors into their practice to educate them and say, this is what we need to do. And if you don't want to take these myopia management patients, you can send them to me. Is that enough? David, you with a myopia management only clinic in the works here, like, are you better positioned to be able to take that on? I mean, because they wouldn't be losing the patient to you, right? Like, because you're only serving that special part of the specialty.
So, everything that you just said, how do we develop these referral sources? And it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, it's taking years in the making, and it's developing these relationships with the docs, doing dinners, doing education, helping them out when they're in trouble. They all have my email, and I get a ton of emails, Dave, what do I do here? And I said, I would try this. Go ahead and try it and let me know how that works out. And you're slowly developing those relationships. So when they get a case where, this is one I'm not comfortable with, can I refer to you? And my next question to them is, absolutely, you can refer to me. How do you want to handle this? Do you want me to take over everything, or do you just want me to get them all settled, send them back to you, and you're going to monitor and modify as needed? So every dog has different they'll give me a different answer. So we have to make it so that they're not losing patients, basically. So I refer to you, and I'm going to get that patient back to some extent. And as long as you have that system in place, the referrals keep coming, right? Mm-hmm. So developing relationships and how you want to co-manage with that doc, those are key things that you have to work out. And you can't just we're going to do it for everyone that refers here. No. Every doc wants to be treated or would like their patients treated and sent back according to what their comfort level is or how they want to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really feel like that's a huge thing that needs to be solved. This lack of referral is a huge obstacle. I mean, you don't see this. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you really don't see this in any other aspect of healthcare. Like if I go to see my general doctor and he's like, I'd like to send you to see the specialist. I just don't get the vibe that he's like, but I'm not going to because I want to keep you as a patient. Like it's just not a thing. And
the thing with optometry too is it's so huge now. There's so many different things you could do with optometry, right? I don't touch a lot of these things because I don't do enough of it. Glaucoma, seriously, I'll refer that patient out. I happen to work in a group practice, so I'm doing this all the time, so we're doing a lot of referrals each time I work, and go down to work. But, that's the thing of it is unless you're doing enough of this stuff, right, you really need to refer the patient out because you're really not serving that patient properly and taking care of him or her, if you're not doing enough of that, especially. So.
Yeah, definitely. For our last thing, I know I said the other thing was the last thing. For our last thing, let's, with the new generation of optometrists facing these problems, what can we say to them? Jennifer, we'll start with you. With that new optometrist, and she's considering myopia management, or maybe she isn't. I don't know, but like, how can we pitch this to make this as appealing and interesting, or as compassionate, or whatever the case may be, without overwhelming them, right? Like, what would your message be to that doc who could get into myopia management?
Yeah, I think compassion is the perfect word. That's what drives me. That's why I started doing this. That's why I care about this, right? If I can look at a parent and say, I'm going to do everything I can to keep your kid's vision from getting worse. I want them to have the best vision possible, the clearest vision possible, and I'm going to try everything I can to keep it like that. Great. Parents on board. I think it's a beautiful mission that we can all stand behind. Now that I have my own 6-year-old, it means even more to me because if I think about her, and if she starts to develop myopia, absolutely, I'm going to do everything I can to keep her prescription as low as possible. I want her to have the best possible vision, just like I want her to have the best possible teeth and the best possible grades in school and everything else. So just think about it as for yourself, compassion for your child, your family members. Your patients are just like your family members. We want to do everything we can to keep their vision clear and their eyes healthy. That's what we do every day with every single thing we approach. And that's why myopia management is just like such a natural thing for us as doctors to be doing in our practice.
Yeah, definitely. Well said. For sure. David, what do you think?
I would say, come spend a day with me. And right, Cary, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Come spend a day with me and look at how people love you and how thankful they are.
Oh my God, yeah.
And how you've saved their child's vision and how you've changed their child's life. I mean, yeah, we got to treat glaucoma. Yeah, we got to treat dry eye, but you don't get feeling like that treating those conditions. You treat myopia, there's a lot of love in the room, right? And you don't get tired of that. To this day, I still do my 1-day post wears for Ortho-K, and those are my favorite days, right? Lenses come off, kids happy, mom's crying in the wait in the chair. She's so happy. We should have came earlier. There's a lot of joy in the room. So come spend a day with me, and you tell me you can get joy doing some other subspecialty, then maybe you should do that too. But I don't think you can.
Well said. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Cary.
Well, I've had a few more years than the rest of you, so I have a real. One of my mentors was Newton Wesley. I don't know if you know who Newton was, but he's one of the most famous eye doctors that ever lived. He had the MD and OD degree, and he actually invented the modern contact lens and barnstormed around the country, educating the public about contact lenses, because at the time when you introduced contact lenses, they were an unknown thing, and people were afraid, what is it going to do when I wear this? But anyway, Newton says, make a legend of yourself. So I always say the saddest thing that I could hear in life is if one of my patients, or they're all our kids, tells us that, I wish I'd done this, or if they're my age and they say, I wish I'd done this and done that. I said, because that's sad. Do what you want to do in life and make it happen, right? Make it so. But make a legend of yourself. Step out. Take that path less traveled. Go down that road. See what it's like and grow with it too. And he was right. That it's an amazing experience, and you grow constantly, right, guys? In this field, you're growing each experience, right, with each patient. So, let's spread that around.
Yeah, and that is the whole point of this podcast. Is I want you to hear from these amazing eye doctors who are doing myopia management, doing successfully, sharing their passion with you, because I figure if you can hear them talk about it in a way that is meaningful and compassionate and motivational, you can hear about their opinions and their points of view, then maybe that will inspire you to get into myopia management. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I would love to have you back on a future episode. I hope you consider coming back.
It would be an honor. Yes, thank you.
Once again, if anybody wants to get in touch with you or wants to know more about you on the internet, how can they do so?
Yeah, it's at idolatry, EYE.DOLARTALAE. Okay, you can cut off. At idolatry on Instagram, or at Defocus Media. You can reach me there as well, or jelyrely@gmail.com.
All right, sounds good. And David, how about yourself?
DNG at themyopiaclinic.ca, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. And David, I always love having you back, and I can't wait to have you back on again. You've easily become one of our favorites, and this is your second time on, but highly requested topic. We did kind of get off of topic, so I'm going to have to retitle this episode, but I really did like the discussion and where it went instead. So maybe we will revisit the other topic, I don't know, and reassemble the panel. Cary, how can people get in touch with you online?
It's OAADOC@gmail.
All right.
Best contact.
Perfect. And for my part, look, the Myopia Mindset is completely listener supported. We don't have any sponsors. It is entirely up to our audience. If they would like to see more of the Myopia Mindset, they can do so at myopiamindset.substack.com. It's just $12 a month, which I like to say, hey, if you would buy me a cup of coffee to hear more about myopia management, to feel the inspiration, and have on amazing guests, then please consider becoming a supporter of the Myopia Mindset. You can do so on our Substack. All right. So thank you so much, all three of you. I'm very excited for where this discussion went. And for everybody else, I will see you at the next one.